Okay, so moving right along, the next step is now we have some photography. Now we can start to digitize some things off of it and turn it into information that is a little bit more valuable or useful in the GIS. So to do that, now we're going to switch over to using ArcMap. So if you have our catalog open, you want to close that out. And then off the taskbar, off the Start menu, open ArcMap. And in this Getting Started window, you can either hit Cancel or under My Templates or New Maps, just select Blank. I like Cancel, it's a little easier. If you have the Distributed Geodatabase toolbar still open, you can close that. We're done with that guy. Okay, so now we've got a blank, new, empty map. The first thing we want to do is we'll load in our aerial photography. So under the Selection menu, hopefully you should see the Add Data button. Your toolbar could be in a different spot, but we used it before. It's got the black plus on it. And now we could load in that photography layer that we downloaded, but we'll try to stick with everything that's in our geodatabase because it's been prepared and everything is kind of organized there. Now if we could go up a level, or actually from the Look-In drop-down menu, under Folder Connection, select T. Should see our GIS for Public Gardens database. Double-click on that. And in there, select Aerial Photography 2009 and click on Add. And it should bring that photo into ArcMap for us. And you can see in the table of contents, it's got the name of this layer, and then it shows you that it's symbolized using a red, green, and blue band. Okay, so now we want to put some information in here, and the data model, what we're going to start with is a set of boundaries. So I find that starting with drawing different boundaries makes the rest of your kind of data creation and collection efforts a little bit easier. So it's kind of like we're setting up the organization of our garden before we actually start adding plants and other things in there. So the first thing I like to focus on is what I call the area of interest. And that little area interest feature class we looked at before, it said that it could be used for the boundaries of things like research projects and events and things like that. But one of the different types of information that it holds is what we call a data set boundary, which is basically kind of a bounding box on the outside of your information that you can use to clip information down. So when if you got some aerial photography from the county or from the city, it may be way bigger than you need for your garden. And every time, when you have information that's bigger, your computer has to process that every time it displays it. So it's usually handy to clip that information down to the area that you're working with. And if you create this data set boundary, you can use that as a bounding box to clip your data to. So it's always a good idea to start with that, and then you can make sure that any other data you create kind of fills up that box or is clipped down to it. So first thing we'll do now is to add in that feature class. So if you click on the Add Data button again and go into the base map feature data set, second one down on the left, and then area interest is the first one there on the upper left. Click on that guy and click Add. ArcMap will take its time processing that, even though there's nothing in it. Okay, and eventually you should see it adds in this area interest feature class. And you can see that it's already categorized based on the different types of information you can put in there. So these different things that it has categorized here are what we call subtypes. And I introduced that briefly before. It's kind of a finer grain of detail for organizing information. So you can see these are the different types, and one of them is dataset extent, and that's what we're going to work on now. So the way this photograph is clipped, I've already clipped it down to the area that we want to work in. So we could draw the bounding box in for this, but I've already created a file, and what we're going to do is we're going to load that file into that. So this is an example of sometimes you're going to get data from other sources, and you want to load it into the kind of the template that we've set up with the data model. So this is going to be how you're going to do that. So to be able to edit data, we have to go into edit mode in ArcGIS. To do that, you can next to the scale drop down here, you can click on this editor toolbar button, or you can also go to the customize menu go to Toolbars, and find the Editor toolbar and turn it on there, either way. And because we're going to use this a lot, I usually just always keep this toolbar active, and I like to dock it so you can take the toolbar and you can click and drag it and slide it into place so it kind of locks it in there for you. And now, one of the tasks that we need to do to be able to load this data in doesn't come as a standard button in ArcGIS, so we need to add that button in. So to do that, we're going to go to the Customize menu, and we're going to go to, I think, Customize Mode. Yep. And then we're going to go to Commands tab. And in the Show Commands Containing box, type in load space objects. And you should see under the commands side here, it should bring up that, that as a result. So if you click on the word load objects, keep your mouse pointer clicked, you can drag this button out to wherever you want to put it. And since it's an editor task, I'm going to put it on the end of the editor toolbar. And you can put that wherever you'd like. And it may make your editor toolbar move on you just so it all fits. It doesn't really matter where it goes. Has everybody got that? All right. No? Customize mode. And this, again, is one of those one-time things. You just do this once, and then this button will stay on the toolbar for you. Yeah?
When you pick the boundaries initially, say your garden expands and you want to, it's fairly simple, just expand your boundary.
It's easy to move your boundary, yeah. You'll be able to, you can start editing and you'll be able to click on it and drag it out to be bigger. The only problem is if you clip stuff down to that smaller boundary, then you're kind of missing data now in those other spots. So it's good to maybe plan ahead for that boundary and make it a little bit bigger. I always take the area that you're really interested in and then put a pretty decent sized buffer on either side of it so that you can see kind of what's around the periphery of your garden as well, you know. So everybody got that? Okay. All right, so now we can close the Customize window. And what we're going to do now is start editing. So on the Editor toolbar, it says Editor on the left side of that toolbar. If you click on that, the first command there will be Start Editing. And this puts us in the edit mode so we can actually make changes to our data. And once you do that, it opens up this Create Features palette on the right. And it shows the different types of features that we can create right now. But we're going to load that information in from a file that we downloaded. So we're going to hit that Load Objects button that we've added. And it asks you first for the input data. So if you hit the folder icon on the end of that, go to Open Geodatabase, and under the Look-In dropdown, under Folder Connections, select our T drive.
Brian, could you just recap that? How do you get into this window?
Oh yeah, I'll do that one more time. Yeah, so to do that, you go on we added the Load Objects button.
Yes.
Click on that. And then from Input Data, select the folder icon. In the drop-down, select our T folder connection. And then double-click on Workshop Data. And then you should see in there should just be one thing listed, and that's Area of Interest.shape. And we're going to click on that, and that's what we're going to load in here. So click on that, hit Open. And then click the Add button at the bottom, and that adds it to our list of things that we're going to load. If you have multiple things that are of the same format, you can do them all at the same time. Once we've got that in there, click the Next button. And then it asks you, where do you want to put this information? So we already have our Area Interest feature class in here, so we can select that from the drop-down list. But then when we select drop-down, it gives us all of our different subtypes as an option. And because this is a dataset extent, as our bounding box, we're going to click on that. And then click Next. And now what it brings up is a list of fields. So it gives us a list of fields in the feature class we're loading stuff into, which is area of interest, and then a list of fields that are in that file that we downloaded. So you can, under these different things, you can kind of match things up so that you can say, all right, I want the data that's in this field and this one that I downloaded to go in here. And traditionally, these things don't match up perfectly because you've downloaded this file from somewhere else, or the city gave you a CAD file or something like that. So things don't generally match up. But you can use this spot to actually match those. So under area of interest ID, you can click where it says none, and you can select the ID field. So that's going to put the ID number into that particular thing for us. Under area of interest type, you can select down arrow, and there's one that says type. So you can select that, and it'll match it up. And because name and start date and end date were already named the same, it's pre-matched those for us. And I know that there's no contact name information or no reference document information in this one that we download, so we'll just leave those as none. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, once we have all of our fields matched up, we can click Next. And it asks, do you want to load everything from this file, or do you want to load things based on a query, which means you can select them. We want to load everything in there. I know that there's just one thing in this particular file. So we'll click on Next. And then it asks you a few more questions, like, are your features precisely located? So we'll say, no, we'll let it slap, or let it snap in. But these are really precisely located. Everything is good to go. So we can leave the default options the way they are. And then click Next. And then it gives you a summary. And you can click Finish. And it very quickly loads in the shape from that file, and it covers up our aerial photography. Now, if the Create Features palette is blocking some of your view, you can hit the Full Extent button, which is the globe icon, and it'll make your data fit into the window for you. So now this area of interest is blocking our photography, so that's a little bit annoying. You can turn it off, or I want to leave it on, but I just want to make it hollow. So under the table of contents where it says Data Set Extent, if you click on the symbol there, the little whatever color it came up for you for Data Set Extent, it'll let you choose the symbol that we've had to symbolize this. So on the right where it says Fill Color, I'm going to click the little down arrow. I'm going to make it so it has no color, so that it's hollow. But then I want to see the boundary of this thing, so I'm going to change the outline width to make it a little bigger. I'm going to make it 2 points. And then the color, I'm going to go with black. You can change it to whatever color you'd like. If you like hot pink, go for it. And then click on OK, and now you'll see now we have this bounding box outside, and we can see through it. And that makes it very handy for putting a border on our maps as well. Yes? So if you click on the table of contents under area of interest, you should see under where it says Data Set Extent, just click on that little rectangle, the colored rectangle there, and then you can change the way it looks. Now, the way that I did it, I just changed the fill color and the outline, but there's predefined ones on the left here, so you could click on the hollow one, which essentially does the same thing, and then just make the boundary a little thicker if you so desire. All right, any questions on that so far?
So I was imagining if we were making these extents, it would be sort of drawing like the outline of the garden itself.
Yes, we're going to do that. It's coming.
So this is everything we use now inside this box.
This particular one is exactly that. It's just a bounding box that you can use for kind of defining how far things are going to go out. So sometimes you might get data from the city, maybe, or you have some existing CAD data, and it goes out beyond what you'd like. You can use this box as a clipping thing. You can either use it to manually clip down the data, so that's all that's on there, or you can use it for ArcMap to only show you things that are inside this box. So it's kind of a handy thing to have.
So because this picture, this image happened to be about the right size, we just use that to create our box.
Exactly, and I already made the file for us, so instead of drawing it, we just imported it in there. And we'll do some drawing here next. Okay, so the next step is now we're going to, well, actually, let me ask you guys a question. Do you want to, A, take lunch, or do you want to, B, keep going for a little while longer? How about the A's, take lunch? You guys are ready to keep going? All right, let's do it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do now is the next level down, and I usually say that the next thing you want to do now is to draw the boundary of your property. I'm going to skip that on this step because our property line's a little bit weird. So I'm going to leave that step out, but that's generally the next step. So you're kind of working down from the broad scale to the finer scale. So a lot of times the boundary of your property is another good piece of information to get from the city or county that you're in. So when you call them up and ask for an aerial photograph, ask them for the parcels, the actual property lines. And then you can import that information the same way that we just imported that area of interest shape. You can import that in there, and then you'll have the actual legal boundaries of your property, which are pretty important because sometimes someone may say, hey, I want to put some stuff on, I want to do a garden over here, and it's like, you actually don't own that, so it's probably not a good idea. So having that information in the GIS can be pretty useful. But what we are going to do is we're going to kind of draw some broad scale boundaries that we've defined in the data model that we call districts, which are kind of the largest level of organization for the garden. So to do that, we need to add the district feature class in. So hit the Add Data button again. And under Look In, go back to our T under Folder Connections. And go into our GIS or Public Gardens geodatabase, go into the base map feature data set, and then you can scroll over until you see district. I'm going to add that one in. So select district and click add. And now the way that ArcGIS 10 works, when you add a new layer, it doesn't give you the option to edit it right away. So on the right, under this Create Features palette here, it shows you all the things that you can create features for. And because we started editing before we added district in there, it didn't add that in. So to be able to add that in there, you can right-click on district in the table of contents and go down to Edit Features and then Organize Feature Templates. And feature templates are all these things that are showing up over on the Create Features palette on the right. So now you should see as layers, there's area of interest and district is already selected, but it says there's no templates to show, so we'll do New Template. And it should have district selected in this next box. And we'll just click on Finish, and it will basically just allow us to create a template for it that looks just like it does over here in the table of contents. Hit Close, and now on our Create Features palettes, we can create features in the district feature class. Does that make sense to everybody? If anyone's used ArcGIS before, this kind of workflow is different for ArcGIS 10. And if you have a different version of ArcGIS at your garden, this may leave you a little confused when you get back. But after using this for a while, I think that this is a good way of doing things. So I do recommend using ArcGIS 10 for this stuff.
So what is that?
So what that step did is it has allowed us to create new features on the map for district. So when you load them in by default, it doesn't give you that option to be able to edit or be able to create new features. So that's just made it so now that we can do that. So now I want to draw in some districts, and we're going to focus on the area that's in the middle of this photo here. So I'm going to zoom into that area a little bit. So if you grab the zoom in icon on the far left, or whatever toolbar it's on, it's the magnifying glass with the plus, and then click and, drag a box around this kind of middle section that's between the two bridges and the two parking lots. So it's bounded by a bridge on the left, bridge on the right, parking lot on the north, parking lot on the south. And zoom in. We're going to work on this very, very simple, sparsely vegetated area of our garden just for simplicity's sake today. So what we want to do here is I want to say that this particular area that's bounded by these bridges and these parking lots is is basically what we call the Ericaceae district, or a part of our garden. So it is plants where we have plants in the Ericaceae family, and they're on both sides of this, both sides of the water feature here in the middle. So I want to draw a boundary for this particular area. So to do that, you can grab the district tool and start clicking and dragging on the map where that boundary is. But you're probably going to want to zoom in so that you can finally place that boundary. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more by clicking and dragging that magnifying glass a little bit more. And I find that a good scale to be at is the approximate scale of your photo. Now in this case, I know that this photo is 6-inch resolution, and you can zoom right into that. I actually like to go to 240. 1 to 240 is that scale I mentioned earlier. And that, I find, is usually a pretty good scale for drawing stuff in. You can see that the photo starts to get fuzzy. We're starting to reach the maximum level of zoom in on this photo. So this is a pretty good scale to draw things at. So now I'm going to click on district, and basically I'm just going to draw the boundary around this thing. So now that I have this crosshair cursor, I'm just going to pick a point on the map that's on the boundary of this road, and I'm going to start drawing. And as I click this first point, it brings up this feature construction toolbar, which kind of gives you some shortcuts for helping to build things. It will move with you as you go, but a lot of times it blocks where you're going. So if you're going a particular direction, move it so that it's out of the way, and it will kind of follow you as you go. So now I'm just going to click, and it's going to add vertices in this line as I go. And I'm just going to trace the outline of this. And for today's purposes, you don't have to be super accurate. If you're doing this for your own garden, you're probably going to want to spend some more time with it. And keep in mind that you can always go back to this after you've created it and edit it to make it a little bit better. Now, I'm drawing along, and I've reached the edge of my screen here, and I can't see anymore. So a really handy shortcut is to use if you press the C button on the keyboard, it changes your tool to the pan tool. And now you can click and drag on the map and slide your image over so that you can see a little bit more. Does that work for everybody? Okay, so I'm going to keep clicking along, clicking, drawing the boundary of our garden, or this district at least. And I'm just going to keep following the pavement, and you should get to the other bridge, and the road should curve. Keep following that. And now this toolbar is in my way again, so I'm going to slide that down. And if you find that that toolbar is annoying you all the time, there's an option in the program where you can turn it off. But it does come in handy. I've debated which way to go many times. Now sometimes you'll get to a spot where it's going to be a little bit difficult to see what's going on. There may be some trees in the way. You can do your best for now. But generally, if you're having a problem with being able to see stuff, this is when you need to take in other data collection methods. So you can use GPS or use surveying to be able to collect these features out in the garden. But if you have a garden with mostly deciduous trees, you'll probably be okay. Now, when you get to a part where it curves, where there's a nice even curve in the road, like where I am here, you see this bike path curves, you can, on this feature construction toolbar, you can click on the second icon from the left, and it'll allow it so that you can do a nice smooth curve. So you can click on that, and then basically click on the endpoint of where you think that curve is, so before it starts curving the other way. And then you can curve that line out, and it'll match up with the pavement pretty nicely. And that gets to be pretty handy for doing nice smooth curves. And then when you're done with that, you got to switch back to the straight segment tool, which is the leftmost button on that construction toolbar. And that's kind of, if you want to delete a point, just put your crosshairs over that point, and I think you can right click on it and it should say delete vertex a few options down. And to get out of that menu, you can hit escape is always a good key to know. Now I'm pretty sure that the rest of this is going to be pretty straight for me, so I'm just going to double click it and close it off. And now if you want to zoom all the way out and see how you did, you can do a couple different things. You can right-click on your layer, and under Selection, you can go Zoom to Selected Features, and it will zoom out to show you the whole thing. Yep. The arc thing can take a little bit to get used to. I was kind of like intermediate level. I just took you guys at intermediate level. All right, how'd you guys do? Oh, once you've done it, did I mention? I don't think I mentioned to close to finish editing. You double click. So the last vertex you're putting in, if you double click on that, it will finish it. You can also right click, and it should say finish part or finish segment for you, and that's another way that you can do it. And then to zoom out to show the whole shape, there's a couple different ways you can do it. Right clicking on the district layer, going to the selection menu and zoom to selected features will do it, and you can also do zoom to layer, which is on that menu, will also do it. All right, so how we doing? How we doing? Is everybody feeling okay about that? So once again, this polygon is covering up our area for us. So I'm going to change the way that it looks. You can just click on the little rectangle symbol under District in the table of contents. And I'm going to change it to hollow. And I'm going to make the line a little bit thicker. I'm going to go up to 2 points like we did for our boundary there so it sticks out. And click OK. And now it's made that clear. And it's still got this blue line around it because that polygon is selected.
Can you recap that once more? Make that to be hollow?
Yeah, so same as before. Under District, the layer that we're working with, click on the little rectangle under it. And then you can either select hollow and change the width, or you can manually do it as we did before. All right, is that working out for everybody? Good. Okay, so now that we've drawn this in, it just is a shape. It doesn't have any information associated with it. So what we need to do is open up the table for this and type in some information about this guy. So on the editor toolbar, all the way towards the right, there's an icon that kind of looks like a table or a list. If you click on that one, it should say, or if you hold your mouse over, it should say attributes. Click on that guy, and it brings up this attributes palette here that lets us enter information about it. Now, this particular feature class is very simple. It doesn't have a lot to it. It just has an ID number, a name, and comments for it that we can enter. So each feature class in the data model has an ID field associated with it. And a lot of things in the GIS require that there be a unique identifier for everything so that you can relate things together. So basically, this ID number here is how we're going to connect things together later. So when we divide this thing up into finer features, we want those features to be associated with this parent feature. So we'll use that number to link things together. And now, most of the time, you can see that there's this object ID field at the top, and it has a number in it. If you enter the number that's there, your number will always be unique. So that's always a good way to go. So I'm just going to match it in there and just put the number 1 in there. And some people will ask, well, why don't you just use the object ID as the unique field? And that's because if you do some data manipulation, those object ID numbers get thrown out, and they'll start over again, which will make it so that you can't keep it unique. So for now, you can just use that object ID number, put in number 1. Okay, and then we're going to, under the district name field, you click in that, and I'm going to call this error case E, because that's what it is. And then if you have any comments, you can type that in there. And the comments field is in every feature class, and this is for any notes that you might want to make about that. If you need to go back and say, oh, well, I kind of can't see under those trees, you can make a comment in there. It's like, maybe you want to survey that for better accuracy under those trees. So you can make little notes like that in there. And that's it. We hit enter, and now you can see up at the top here, it has the it says district, and then under it now it says area KCE. So if we had more districts selected, it would show us all those different things here. If you click on the plus next to area KCE, it will open up and it shows you the other feature classes in the data model that are related to this one. So if we had drawn in our property feature class, it would show us that in our property now we have this one district. And then you can also see that section is related to it, and that is the next finer grain of detail that we're going to go down to. So in this area of our garden, our area KCE district is divided into two sections based on the water feature here. So we have a north section, north of the water, and we have a south section. And now your garden, you may not have these kind of different levels of granularity that you design your garden into, but it can be a handy thing as you're building your GIS to think about that stuff. Is like, oh, I'd actually like to have the east end of my garden be kind of a space that I can call out and I can identify on the map. So you can use this to kind of work on that as you go.
You can set up districts after the fact.
You can. You can definitely go back and change anything you want, but it makes it's easier if you do the boundary kind of stuff and as you go, because as you're creating plant features and other things, it'll have placeholders for what's the name of the district that it's in, or the name of the sections that it's in, and things like that. And you can link things together. Now under area KCE, it says section here. That's the next thing we want to add. So if you click on section and you right-click it, you can click Add to Map. And now it added that feature class to our table of contents here on the left, and we can start editing features in it. So now we want to create features, so we need to go back to our Create Features palette. So to get that, over on the lower right-hand corner, click on the Create Features. And again, it's got us in a spot where we don't have the ability to draw in that, so we have to create a template for it. So under the table of contents, under section, right-click on it, and do Edit Features, Organize Feature Templates, just like we did before. And here, it already has sections highlighted, but there's no template to show, so we hit New Template. It should have section selected here. Click Finish. It creates an icon for it, just like it is over here on the left. And hit Close, and now in our Create Features palette, we can create features for the section. All right. So there's two ways you can do this. So since we're dividing this district up into two sections, I could go through and I could manually draw the section in, trying to make sure that it lines up perfectly with the thing we've already drawn. But since we're dividing it perfectly and we want these to be nested inside of one another, we're going to take a little shortcut, and we're going to copy this polygon for the district and paste it in there, and then we'll slice it in half. And that way, everything will be perfectly nested inside of the other thing. So we already have our district selected. So under the Edit menu, on the top left, select Copy. And then on that same Edit menu, go back and click Paste. And it asks you, where do you want to paste this polygon into? And we already have a district, so that's not it. We want to get the down arrow and click on Section. And then you click OK, and boom, it throws that polygon into the section feature class for us. But again, I want to see through this, so I'm going to change the symbol for it under Section, and click on the icon here. I'm going to make it hollow, and click OK. Now I can see again. Now, it's got this section polygon selected, I think, but it also kind of looks like the district polygon, so I can't tell. So if you go under Table of Contents here, there's these different little icons here. You can list by drawing order, you can list by source, you can list by visibility, or you can list by selection. This is pretty handy. So if you go to List by Selection, it shows you which layers are selectable, and then over on the right you'll see a number, and that shows you which features are selected. So right now it's saying that district and area of interest don't have anything selected. That's good. And then under section, it does have one thing selected. So that's what we've got selected. So that's good to know. So now that it's selected, I can draw a line down the middle of this thing where I want to split it into two different sections. We're going on. This is intermediate level, guys. So we're moving up here. To be able to split this in half, on the editor toolbar, if you go over about halfway through, there's a rectangle with a line through the middle of it. And it says Cut Polygons tool. So if you click on that, now we can draw a line down the middle. Now it's important that the line kind of at least go to the edge of what we're trying to cut or a little bit beyond so that it knows that we're trying to cut this thing in half. So you can start your line outside of the polygon a little bit and then kind of just go down the middle of the water feature because that's where we want to cut this thing in half. So I'm just going to go, I'm going to put some vertices in down the middle of this guy. And when I get outside the other end of it, I'm going to double click to close it. And then it splits that district into two sections for us. And now, just like before, like we did with district, we need to enter some information about these so that I can tell things apart. Now, if we switch to the Attributes tab in the lower right-hand corner here, if that's not available, you can open it up from the editor toolbar. Now you can see that it's got, on the top here, it's got section, and then it says error KCE, error KCEs, because it copied information from our district for us. So we click on the first one, you'll see that it highlights it on the map for us, so you can see which one that is. So we want to change the information for this guy. We need to give it an ID number. So again, we'll just copy the ID, we'll enter 1 for that. And under the section name, this is going to be North Error KC, so I'm going to enter North in there. And then this is pretty important. Right here on the bottom it says District ID. And this is how we link things together to our district. So we want these sections to be associated with that district so that we can find out that this district has two sections inside of it really easily. So to do that, we need to make sure that the ID number is in there. And it already is in there for us because it copied it. So it's pretty handy. So we can leave that just like it is. And then we'll move on and we'll enter information about this south section here. So we'll click on error KCE. And you can see after that now it's changed our one section name to North Error KCE for us.
Can you put a space when you're naming the section?
Yes, yeah. So all the attribute information can have spaces in it. It's just the names of the feature classes in the geodatabase itself that don't allow spaces. Okay, so I'm clicking on this other one here. Now it's highlighting our southern section here. So the ID number, I'm going to copy the object ID, put in 2. And the section name, I'm just going to type in South, error KCE. And this one, it looks like it didn't copy the district ID for us. So we need to know what the ID number was of that district. And now I could go back and check that, but we know that it's 1 because it's the first one that we made. So we'll type in 1 there. And now it's renamed that up in the top here for us. What I want to do is I want to look to see how this worked now. I want to select my district and make sure that things are linked. So under table of contents here, go back to list by drawing order. And because I have these sections selected, I'm going to want to clear these. I don't want anything selected right now. So I'm going to, on the toolbar here, next to the pointer, you'll see the pointer arrow, which is select elements. Hit it's like a polygon icon that's white. It's called cleared selected features. Like hit that, and now nothing is selected. But you can see we've got our nice thick line for our district and then a smaller line going through the middle that divides it into 2 sections. So I want to select this district, and there's lots of different ways you can do it. ArcGIS gives you tons of options. An easy way to do it for me is I'm going to open up the attribute table here by right-clicking on district, hit open attribute table, and then it shows the table view of this feature class for us. And you can see the information that we entered on the side is entered here. It's also calculated a length and an area for this particular polygon. So if you just click on the left side, it will select that record for us. There should be a little arrow there. So select that, and then you can close this view. You can also take these windows and dock them. So if you click on the top of this, where the blue, whatever you want to call that is, the blue top of the window, you can see when I grab it, it gives me these different options of where I can put it. If you click on it, it shows these little blue icons. If you go all the way down to the bottom, there's a blue little arrow here. I like to dock this thing at the bottom. So if once I get my mouse over that, it will kind of dock it in there for you, and you can use the pin in the upper right-hand corner of that to hide it. So now it's hidden, but if I go over to the lower left here, it says table, it will reopen that for us. So that's kind of a handy way to get windows out of the way. Yes?
The area field there,
What
unit would that be?
Good question. The area field is in the same unit as our coordinate system, same with the length. So since our coordinate system was in feet, this unit will be in feet. So length is in feet, and area would be square feet. Okay, so I'm going to close my table here now that I've got my district selected. And really what I want to illustrate here is now in the upper right under attributes, it says district and it has our area KCE section. You can now expand this, and you can see under area KCE district, under area KCE district now it has section. You hit the plus, and it shows you that we have a south area KCE section and a north area KCE section nested inside of that district. So this kind of functionality is really handy when you want to do reporting and other things like that. Because we built in these relationships, we can now report on all these things. So I want to run a report on my accessions that are inside the South Area KCE section. Really easy to do. There's built-in stuff into the software for doing reporting. I'm not going to have a chance to get into that today, but it makes it really easy to report on any kind of different thing. I want to report on plants in this district. I want to report on plants in this section. I want to report on plants in the whole garden. You can do all that stuff really easily. Okay, any questions on that so far? All right, let's move on a little bit further here. Now the next thing I want to do inside of here is I think we're going to draw in some pavement. So we've got some sidewalks here. I want to draw those in. To do that, we're going to draw in, or we're going to add in another layer here. So you go to Add Data, and scroll over. We're looking for Pavement Segment. That's the name of the feature class that we draw all of our paved area in. Scroll over to TC Pavement Segment, hit Add, and it adds that to our table of contents. And you can see that this particular feature class is divided into all sorts of different types of pavements. So you can have bridges, docks or piers, driveways, parking lots, pathways, patios, roads, sport surfaces, you name it, all kinds of different options for drawing in pavement, even stairways going there. So again, to be able to create features on this, we're going to have to create a template for it. So on the lower left here, click on Create Features, and it should bring this up again, and you'll see the pavement segment's not added to it. So we'll right-click on Pavement Segment in the table of contents, Edit Features, Organize Feature Templates, New Template, Pavement segment selected, hit Next, and then Finish. And now it creates templates for all those different types of things. Hit Close, and now you should see that on the right-hand side under Create Features. Okay, so I want to draw in this pathway here. An important thing to know here, I guess, is that we have two different things in here that are really similar. So there's pathway and there's sidewalk. And now you can choose how to use these any way you want, but we've really set it up so that a pathway is something that's not near a road, but a sidewalk is right next to a road. So, you know, if you have a traditional sidewalk, like a city sidewalk that's usually right on the side of the road, we call those sidewalks, and then anything else that is detached, we call that a pathway. Okay, so I want to zoom in to a little further in so that I can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to type in 240 in the scale box to get back to that scale that we were working at. And then I'm going to hold down the C key to get the pan, and I'm going to go all the way over to one side so I can start on an edge. Starting on an edge is always a good idea. And now I want my pathway to line up very nicely with our district or section boundaries on the edge here so that there's no gaps in between them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my pathway template here on the Create Features palette. And then when I get over to the edge, you can see that as I get over that, it tells me that it's snapping to this edge. It says section edge. And that means that it's going to be right up against it. So this little snap tips here are really handy for knowing where your cursor is. So I'm just going to click over here on the edge where the sidewalk kind of intersects this edge and start drawing. And same as before, same technique. Just kind of put a vertex every so often, and as if you're doing this for your own garden, you would obviously do it a little bit more accurately. And it gets a little bit hard to interpret what this sidewalk is, but we'll do our best. And then when I get to the edge here, I want to make sure that it says section : edge. I'm going to click on that edge, and I'm going to go to the other edge where this is. And now, one thing, if you want it to line up perfectly, sometimes you're going to want to know where the other vertices are. So where the edge vertices are. Now, if you're over the edge, over this edge here, and you press the V key, it shows you the locations of the other vertices that you've placed. And then you can put your cursor right over that and snap to it perfectly. And that means that there will be zero gap between those two things. And sometimes those things will disappear on you. Just kind of toggle that V key to be able to see what's going on. And sometimes you'll notice that the polygon that you're drawing starts covering what you're actually trying to draw in or trying to trace. And to avoid that, you have to change the feature template before you start drawing to something that's hollow or something that's a little bit more see-through. I can show you how to do that in a second. So I'm just going to continue. I'm going to trace all of this pathway as one feature. So I'm just going all the way around the outside of this guy. And then when I get to the edge again, I'm going to look for vertices by pressing that V key. See if there's anything I want to snap to. And we should have made it clear or see-through before we started doing this, so that it was a little easier to work with. But since we're just doing this for fun, we're just going to not worry about it that much. And then when you get to the end, you want to double-click where you put your last vertice, and that closes everything. And then if I want to see my work, I can right-click on Pavement segment in the table of contents, selection, zoom to selected features, and now you can see your work and see how you did. And if you need to change that, if you need to go make some changes to it, on the editor toolbar, second from the left, there's the edit tool. Double click on that polygon, it brings up all the vertices, and you can select any one of those with this tool and move it to where you need to move it. So if you messed up, you can go back and change it pretty easily. All right, how's everybody doing with that? So when you finish that polygon, we're going to go back and every time we need to enter information about it. So we go to the Attributes tab here. And we need to make sure that our polygon's selected. If you've unselected it, you can grab that Edit tool on the Editor toolbar, second from the left. Click on our feature. And then it brings up all the attributes for this feature. And you can see that Pavement segment has lots of different things in it. And a lot of this stuff that's in here is meant for facilities folks. So if there's, you have somebody in your organization who does a lot of the facilities maintenance, there's lots of stuff in here for them to be able to manage this piece. So there's things like when it was constructed, links to the blueprints, when it was last maintained, links to the blueprints, when it was last inspected, the current condition of it, an index. A lot of larger organizations use special software for being able to manage their paved surfaces, so there's stuff in there for that. Predicted condition, whether there's parking, number of parking spaces. If it's a bridge, there's information on the capacity of that bridge. So lots of different stuff. If you're not concerned with that stuff, leave it blank. So starting at the top here, I'm going to enter the ID. I'm just going to put in 1. It's the first thing we put in. The type is already pre-filled in because we selected it before we drew it. Under name, I'm going to call this the South Era KCE pathway. You can call it whatever you want. Under construction type, I'm going to click on that. And I know that this one's asphalt, and this is where the domains come in. So we've already designed a domain for this that has different material types. And this is very basic. If you have other material types, I'll show you how to edit this domain to add things to this list a little bit later. I'm going to select asphalt because I know it's asphalt. I have no clue when this thing was built. I don't have a link to the construction documents, so I'm going to leave all these things blank. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Under parking type, it doesn't have parking, so it's not a bridge. We'll leave all that blank. Traffic load or capacity, we don't know any of that kind of stuff. I do know that it's not pervious. Sometimes people are interested in calculating the amount of pervious surface they have for runoff and things like that. So you can fill that in if you want. So I'm going to put no. I do know that this is ADA accessible, so I'm going to put in yes. That makes it so that if you ever want to be able to route people with disabilities, you can do that based on these values. If you have a contact name, someone to get in touch with that maintains this, you can put that in here, and a few other things that we'll get into. So really, you don't have to fill in too much on this. And if you wanted to hide all these fields, you can do that by double-clicking on Pavement segment here in the table of contents and going to fields, and you can unclick these checkboxes and you can make those fields go away so that they're still there if you ever want them later, but if you're not using them, you can turn them off so you're not seeing them. And that's about it. Are there any questions on that? Yeah?
If you accidentally created it as, say, like the sidewalk, you wanted to switch it over?
Yeah, so under where we are right now in attributes, it says pavement segment type. You can click on pathway and it should have the 3 little dots that show up. If you click on those 3 dots, it should bring up a list of all the different types, and you can select pathway, and it will change it to that. Now, one disclaimer, I'm pretty sure that this version of ArcGIS, if you do this, it might crash. But you can try it and let me know if it works. And it may ask you after you do that if you want to change your values to the default value for that type. Just hit no. I think that might keep it from crashing. Yeah, we're done. Any more questions? All right, we're going to take a much-needed lunch break, and then we'll come back and we will work on doing some plants.